Hey, what's up guys? Chris Trini here for Chris Core Productions, and welcome to another very basic tutorial inside of After Effects. Today, as you can tell, we're going to be covering expressions and expression controls. Now, don't let this frighten you. Whenever you hear expressions, you think of coding and math, and it's all pretty boring stuff for most people, but we're actually going to be looking at the workflow and how expressions work, and we're going to be using them in very unique ways that might be able to speed up some of your animating and other things like that in After Effects. So let's take a look at what we have here. We have some simple animations. We have a controller layer and a null object that control pretty much these other layers over here. We have three shape layers, which are the three boxes on the bottom here, and we have this text that says expressions and expression controls. So the controller here is pretty much just a white solid, and I'm going to be showing you in just a second everything from scratch, but just as an overview, this is a simple white solid, and I just shut it off so we don't have to see it. And it has these controllers applied to them, and all these controllers are linked to certain things and effects in these other layers over here. And then we have our null object, and we have a simple expression with its anchor point to get a little bit of a shakiness to it. So if I scroll here, you can see that it gets a little shaky and then it starts going crazy. What's doing that is the anchor point of this null object, and as you can see, all of my other layers over here are actually parented to that null object. You can see that all boxes change color as they rotate, and things get crazy after that. So let's start from the very beginning, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit out of this. So this is pretty much how your After Effects should look like. I just have two effects control panels over here, and you'll see why in just a second. Let's get rid of all of these expressions, and the first thing that you can see that I'll be doing is I'll be alt clicking on the stopwatch, and that will get rid of my expression. And it's the same for the other way around. If you have a property that you want to make an expression to, you can alt click on the stopwatch. These parameters will turn red, and you will have some texture to edit and work some magic on there. So we don't need that for now. We're just pretty much resetting everything. Let me go back to the beginning here, and let me just delete all these keyframes that I made. Let's go to the shape layer, and let's delete that expression. Delete that expression. Okay, so now if I scroll through here, we see that there's nothing going on. So we just have our text and our three boxes, and they're doing absolutely nothing. Also, let me just delete this and the null object so we can really start from scratch here. As you can see, I applied a fill effect to all these shape layers, and that's pretty much it as far as effects. There's nothing else going on in the text. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is create a new solid. The color doesn't really matter, so pick any color that you want. Click OK, and then we're going to shut this layer off. So it's it's still there, but we just don't see it. And what we're going to be doing is, if I go in my effects and presets, and I go under expression controls, you see that we have a couple of cool options in ways that we can control certain things with, like slider controls, checkbox control, angle control, and this is really cool stuff. So for this example, we're going to just apply a couple of slider controls. Let's do 2, and a color control, and what else did I have? Oh, an angle control. Okay, and just to let you guys know what's going on here, this first slider control will be for the wiggle amount, and wiggle will be an expression that we're later going to apply to our null object that creates that shakiness. So there's two parameters for the wiggle expression, and you'll be seeing that in just a second. But there's a wiggle amount, and then there is the wiggle speed, and that's the amount of times that it's occurring per second. Then we have our color control, and we're going to start off with white, and then we're going to gradually animate this color to something else as these boxes rotate. And then we have our angle control, which is will be the angle of these three boxes over here. Okay, so the last thing that we need as far as elements here is our null object. So we go under new, null object, and we're going to parent all of this stuff to that null. Okay, so we have all these layers linked up to our null. So now if I move this null around, you can see that all the layers follow it, which is pretty cool. So we're going to shut this null off so we don't see it and it doesn't clutter our scene here. And I'm going to hit A on my keyboard with the null object selected. And there's a couple ways that people apply this expression to certain things. I mean, sometimes you can apply the wiggle expression to the position to create that shakiness. You can even apply to the rotation. I mean, really, you can apply the wiggle expression to anything. We're going to alt click on the stopwatch of the anchor point, and now we can edit this text over here, and you can make some room by clicking the bottom part of it. You know, you're typing up long expressions, but no need for it in this example. So we're going to type in wiggle, and then parentheses 2, 5, and end parentheses. Okay, so what we told After Effects right now with this very simple expression is to wiggle at this speed and wiggle at this amount of pixels for that speed. So what we have, if I scroll through, is just a very slight shakiness to our layers. This is my favorite expression, and you can see why it can be used for really a ton of stuff. But let's say you want to animate these values, and you don't want to have just a constant shakiness throughout your whole composition. You actually want to maybe start it without having any shakiness to it, then maybe increase it, and maybe have it go crazy like in our in the example that we first saw in the beginning of the video. Well, this is where these slider controls come into play. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be linking these two values over here that pretty much control the wiggle effect, and we're going to be linking it to the wiggle amount and the wiggle speed. So let's do that right now. Let's go back to our expression. We can just click over the text, and we can now edit this again. And I'm going to delete this this first value, which is the speed of it, and I'm going to use this this little squiggly icon called the pick whip tool, and I'm going to click and drag this to pick whip the slider of the wiggle speed. So now you see a bunch of text that pops up as soon as we do that, and pretty much all of this means is that instead of using a numeric value, it's actually going to pretty much listen to the value of this slider over here. So we have that value that's already linked up, and now next up we just do the amount. Instead of it being 5, we also want to control that through the slider amount. So same thing here, we use this little weird squiggly icon, and we're going to grab this this slider over here, the slider amount. So again, you can see a very similar type of text appears. And with that being done, we are actually finished for the first step of linking the wiggle expression with our sliders. So if I scroll through here, nothing happens. And that's really good because we have slider set to 0 and this other slider set to 0 as well. So right now the wiggle amount and the wiggle speed is set to 0. So let's make a keyframe here of both the slider, the wiggle amount slider and the wiggle speed slider. And if I select my this white solid that we created, our controller, let me actually rename that controller. By the way, I hit enter when I select the layer, so you can rename your layers. You can do the same thing with all of these. Let me be organized here, organized and professional. Yeah, right. And going back to the controller here, if I hit U with the layer selected, we can see that we now have these two keyframes that we just created with these two sliders over here. So let's go forward in time to about maybe, I don't know, 3 seconds. And let's set the wiggle amount to, I don't know, 25. And the wiggle speed to, let's do maybe 1. Okay, so as I scroll through here, you can see that these values are actually increasing, from 0 to 25 and 1. And as that's doing that, you see that our shakiness is progressively increasing. So that is exactly what we want. And at this point, you pretty much get the idea. You can animate this this shakiness, the shakiness amount and speed, however you like, because everything is now linked to these two sliders. So definitely really cool. Hopefully, you're starting to see that expressions are not that scary and that they can actually be really useful. So let's move on to some of the other stuff that you saw in the example. So let me collapse this, and what I'm going to do here I'm going to actually duplicate this effects controls. I'm going to go here, new effects controls viewer, and let's see here. I'm going to go and I want this one. I want our controller. The reason why I split it like this is because whenever I'm going to be going through all these other layers, I want to link certain effects and certain things to these, the color controller, the angle controller. So it's good to always have it here so that you don't have to go back and look for it. So it just saves you some time, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. So let's do something really simple. Let's link the rotation of these boxes here with the angle control over here. So I'm going to hit R on my keyboard with the box selected. I'm going to alt click on the stopwatch, and I'm pretty much going to be doing the same thing. I'm going to be using this pick whip tool to link it to this angle control. So if I click away, now if I change this angle control, you can see our box is following this these values over here. Now something cool about this, the reason why I have 3 boxes is I want to show you that you can apply multiple values on different layers to the same controller. So we're going to do the same thing with our second box over here. I'll click on the rotation and pretty much repeat the same steps for all 3 boxes. Boom. So now if I change the value in my angle control here, you can see that all 3 boxes are rotating nicely. Now obviously this is pretty boring. We're just applying these ideas to just 3 boxes in a text, but hopefully you will will learn these techniques and apply them to either your workflow or different visual effects that you'll be doing. So I'm just hoping that I'm not putting you to sleep here. I know how expressions can get. But anyways, now that we have our angle controller linked with our rotation of our boxes, let's have the colors of these boxes change with our color control here. So as you can see, all of these layers, if I go through here, all these box layers, each have a fill effect. And the reason why I apply a fill effect to all these 3 boxes is because there's a color box here that we can select the color of each individual box. But what I'm actually going to want to do with this is I'm going to alt click on the color stopwatch, and I want to link this to the color control here. So now you see why it was pretty convenient to us to split these effects control panels. You can just quickly access all of these parameters over here. So I'm going to use the same tool and grab this guy over here. So now if I change the color through the color control in our controller layer, we're going to see that first box be affected by that. And this may seem a little repetitive. We're going to be doing the same stuff with pretty much all of these other boxes. But something cool that you guys can do also, instead of repeating those that same step of linking it up, if I delete the fill effect on the other 2 boxes and I go back to the first box, which has its color linked to the color control already, if I select that effect and I hit Command C and I paste it to the other boxes, you can see that if I change the color on the control, on the color control here, you can see that all the boxes are now being affected. And the reason why that little shortcut worked is because we didn't really link anything of the layer itself, but instead we linked a parameter in the effect applied to that layer. So once we copy that effect, it's actually copying all the expressions attached to it, and we can just paste it to the other boxes over here. So little cool thing to know, if you want to speed things up. But anyways, in the example, you saw that the last box was actually the brightest and the more saturated in color, and then the middle one was slightly less, and the first one was even more faded. And I did that with some very, very simple math. And when I say simple, I really mean simple. So let's go to our last box here. Actually, we don't want this to be affected. We want this to be as bright and as colorful as possible. But if we go down to our middle box here, if I go under Effects, Fill, and I look for the color expression here that we created with that fill effect, if I actually, at the end of this the string of text, if I put divided by 2, if I click away, and same thing with any other color, if I bring it to bright red, you can now see that the first and last box right now are not affected, but the middle box that was divided by 2 is now pretty much half of the intensity of this red, if that makes any sense. So you see what I mean by very, very simple math. Let's go to our first box, and let's divide this one by 4. So now you can see that this is a quarter as intense as the last one, and this is half as intense as this last one over here. And the reason why I showed you this in the example is because you can add some very basic math to your expressions to control them even further. So instead of using division, let's take a look at how you can use something like addition or multiplying. Let's go to the rotation of this last box over here, and I can even put at the end of this expression times 2, or let's do times 3. Go to the middle box, rotation, let's bring up the expression, and let's put that times 2. So now if I go to my angle controller here, you can see that this is starting to behave in a slightly different way. It's actually grabbing this value over here, and it's multiplying it times 2 for the middle box and times 3 for the last box. So in a way you can say that this is rotating at normal speed, and this is rotating at twice as fast, and this at 3 times the speed as the first one. So again, this is just to show you how you can apply some very easy math to to help you out in some situations. So instead of times 3, you can do let's say plus 10. Click away, and as you can see, that is behaving accordingly. So this is really easy stuff. If you want to disable an expression without deleting it, let's say you're just testing some stuff out, you can click on this equal sign over here, and that will tell After Effects to ignore the expression. So this is cool if you're testing things out. If you want to see what it looks like without it, but you don't want to delete it and go through the same steps again, you can just disable it momentarily and bring it back up whenever you're ready. Also, just a quick side note, you probably won't be needing it too much for these very basic expressions, but if things get too cluttered and you want to prevent yourself from going insane, if you have a lot of code, then you can do the division symbol twice, or the backslash, and you can say comments here. I don't know, like this is a tutorial that may put people to sleep. And if I play around with these parameters here, you can see that it's not being affected by this line over here, because it's just a comment. So pretty much whenever you put these 2 backslashes here, After Effects knows to skip that line and ignore it. Well, okay, I did not type that. that was weird. So anyways, as I was so sorry guys, I don't really know what I'm doing wrong here. This isn't supposed to be okay. Let's move on here. So to wrap this up, I really don't know. Whoa. I'm really sorry. I have no idea what's wrong with my computer right now. This shouldn't be popping up. I don't know if it's something I'm typing the expression, but all right. I'm gonna try this again. Close this out. All right, guys. I apologize again for that last bit. I don't really know what's going on with my computer. I should probably bring it into Apple and get it fixed. Not sure, but hopefully, before all of that, you guys gather enough information to know the basics of expressions and how to link certain effects and certain parameters to expression controls. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.